Hello everyone, I'm Casper and I'm the founder of Testeroni, where we help our clients make sure that they deliver the software fully cooked instead of half-baked. And today we're going to be covering one of the most pressing issues, I would say, judging by my experience with my students at workshops or online, which is which language do I learn if I want to become a test automation engineer? So I hope that this will be helpful. And so let's jump right in. Let's jump to our whiteboard. And so this is the question. Which language do I learn? So it seems to me like this is a central point of becoming a test automation engineer for many people. Like this is the first question that comes to the mind. And this is something that is really pressing for them. So I don't want to burst your bubble, but the short answer to this, which we're going to uncover and unpack during this whole session, is it doesn't matter. So, yeah, sorry to be a downer, sorry to rain on your parade, but that is what I think about that. And I'm going to, of course, to give you some good reason for that, but I just wanted to have that out of the way already. So many people seem to procrastinate forever the journey to become a test automation engineer because they are overwhelmed by this notion that this is the issue. So that this is the problem that they have to first somehow, crack in their heads before they can progress to becoming a test automation engineer. And I think it isn't. And I don't want to seem negative about that because that's actually freeing. Like, I see many people when they think about that problem. So they, first of all, they deem this as a problem. And why is it a problem? Like, why is it a problem? So, of course, we're talking about that one. So why is it a problem? Because I may choose wrong. I may choose the wrong one. The wrong one. I don't know what criteria should I think about. I don't know which one gives me the most opportunities. And stuff like that. Like, I think that if you are a QA engineer already and you are pondering how to become a test automation engineer, I think that many of those things may already be resounding in your brain, like that you may feel the echo of your own doubts within those. And today we're going to tackle all this together and to talk about why, in actuality, the problems that you think about are not problems at all, because this is the way. All right, so first of all, let's maybe jump to a new canvas. And so now that we have that out of the way, we know that it is a problem. It is something that many people talk about like it is a problem. We know that many people think that, I may not be like cut for it. Like I may not have a good idea about like science to I'm not the nerdy type to really dive into that. It all doesn't matter. And what does matter, and we're going to talk about that right now, maybe let's tackle it from the perspective of what actually you need to become a test automation engineer. So I would say there are three things. There are three main things that you need to become a test automation engineer. And bear with me, we are still answering the first question. I'm not going on a tangent right now. We are still answering the first question. So there are, I would say, three things you need to become a test automation engineer. All right, so number one is domain-specific knowledge, so testing knowledge. So this is like testing know-how. Number two is understanding of programming. And like I want you to take note of the precise wording of that one. Knowledge, the general knowledge of programming in general, not a specific language. And we're going to dive into that. So, general knowledge of programming. Okay. Number 3 is knowledge of a specific testing framework. Knowledge of a framework. All right. And number 3 is interesting in and of itself. And we'll do another video on that one, because that is also a question that is worth pondering and worth like wrapping your head around. So in general, the order in which you acquire these things is like that. So let's do acquisition. So this is the order in which you acquire those things. So first of all, you acquire the domain knowledge. So this is the testing know-how. So this is something that you already have, because you are already a QA engineer. You are not stepping into the field like from completely afar. You are just like going through the steps of the QA world. So you have the testing know-how. So that one you already have. After that, you acquire the general knowledge of programming, which is like the big topic of what we're going to be talking about today. And number 3 is the knowledge of a framework, which also comes with its own caveats, like I have already hinted, but we're going to talk about that in detail in another video. So today, of course, we are focusing on that one. But the reason why I wanted to list those 3 things is that apart from the order of acquisition, there's also, I think, the order of importance. And this one is not as straightforward, because most people think that if you want to rate them by importance, most people would say that the knowledge of a framework or programming are most likely in the first place together. And then, in a second place, it's the know-how. Well, I completely don't agree with that. I don't agree with that neither through my experience, neither through my consultancy experience, neither through my company's experience, neither through me being a QA engineer either. So for me, and I think that when you dive deeper into the field, you're going to like have a similar experience. The most important thing is the knowledge of the framework. Then is the testing know-how, and then is the general knowledge of programming. And I'm not talking about that to discourage you. I'm talking about that to actually free your mind of the notion that this is some kind of a deal breaker, that it's some kind of a, once in a lifetime decision where you can go wrong. It's not. And we're going to dive, of course, deeper into that in a second. But let me just stay on that slide for a second more. So the reason it's like that is the knowledge of a framework is the most important, because this is something that you're going to be thrown into the second you go into a project. The testing know-how is important because it gives you the fundamentals. Like, this is the actual fundamentals you're stepping on as a QA engineer. So this is something that actually gives you the ground. That's the ground level, I would say. And the general knowledge of programming, it's just a crutch to actually use the knowledge of a framework. So I would say that it's a device to get you to the knowledge of the framework, but it's not a goal in and of itself. And so now we're going to go into a deeper understanding of that. So let me just get that out of the way. All right. So maybe let's write it as 3, or maybe not even 3. Let's just list them. So the thing that I wanted to focus on right now is what you need to understand about the knowledge of programming. So knowledge, maybe let's stick to the colors that we had before. So knowledge of coding as a QA. So first of all, you are not expected to be an expert in coding itself. So you are an expert at testing with a capital T, not programming. And the reason I think it's important is that I see people time and again talking about, oh, I don't know which language to choose. Like, I'm not really sure because, Python is good for this one and C# is good for this and Java is cool and I don't know. And there are many job opportunities in that one and I'm not so sure. And the truth of the matter is that it doesn't matter. When you're talking about all this stuff, you already diving too deep, even though you don't know how to program yet. So when you are talking about like performance or like memory management or thinking about which one has this cool thing or this cool thing, it doesn't matter, because in reality, all of the main languages which you have the choice from today, and by the way, there are 4 main languages. So when we are talking about knowledge of programming in this video, I am referring to either of the 4 main languages, and these main languages are Python, Java, JavaScript, and C#. So this is like the big 4. And let's make it like that, because like this is the big 4, and your choices, the only limitation you have is that I would recommend going with either of those 4. Like, other than that, this gets complicated when you step out of the 4. But as long as we're within the 4, the point still stands that it doesn't matter. And so back to the point of that you're not becoming an expert. So the problem with the whole thinking that I don't know what to do because this one has this going for it and the other one has another thing going for it. So the problem with this approach is that you are thinking like a developer and you are not going to become a developer. So these things are important when you deal with this stuff the whole day, the whole night. Like when your bread and butter and your day job is actually knowing the ins and outs of a programming language, and this is the case for software developers, then it is important because you need to dive really deep and you need to actually know what's the difference. You need to actually know how to leverage the advantages and disadvantages of your programming language in order to actually work for you. However, when you are a test automation engineer, the only reason you are using a programming language is that you need it in order to jump into a testing framework. You don't need, all the algorithms and data structures. You don't need to know the difference between a logarithmic time of execution and a quadratic time. You don't need to understand how to implement a hash map. You don't need all that. It's also, like, as a side note, I don't think many of those things are important as a developer either. But back to being a tester, you don't need these things. So don't clutter your mind with the notion that these are the questions. They are not. So nowadays, all 4 of these languages, so this may have been debatable in the past, but nowadays not anymore. So either of those foreign languages, they are all object-oriented. They are all very modern. They all take care of many of the things. And of course, they come with their own caveats. But truth of the matter is that you either will never encounter these problems, or you will encounter them and you will just Google a solution within 3 seconds. So the important thing is that you need these languages only to incorporate into your mind the bare bone basics of programming as a whole. So this comes back to the thing that we talked about before, the general knowledge programming. And so you are not going to become an expert at Java, an expert at Python, an expert at C#. Not because you can't. I'm talking about like what you actually need in order not to waste time. So you are not going to become an expert at any of them. You just need to become proficient at the core concepts of programming because they translate through these languages from one to another without like any problem. As long as you understand the bare basic concepts of programming, by which I mean, so maybe let's even write that down. So the core concepts of programming. When I talk about the core concepts of programming throughout this talk, what I mean are things like loops, things like functions, things like data types, the whole flow of your application, the way to actually run something, to gather input from the user, to use an external library and stuff like that. So these things, they carry from one language to another. And at the end of this talk, I'm actually going to do a little presentation in which I will show you that it doesn't matter which one you learn, because the knowledge, the domain-specific knowledge carries over from one to another. So this is what you should focus on. You should focus on the core concepts of programming, and you are going to learn them regardless of which language you actually choose. So it doesn't matter which one you choose. They are all modern, they are all object-oriented, and they will all teach you these core concepts, because it doesn't go any other way. You can't learn even the basics of them without those core concepts, and those core concepts happen to be all you need. So you should not focus on overcomplicating this stuff and being stuck on the fence forever, because it doesn't matter. So the most important thing to remember from this first point that we're talking about is that as long as you choose any one of those 4 languages, you will learn the core concepts of programming, and that is all you need. You don't need to focus on any specific caveats of a given language, and don't even start thinking about things like memory management and performance and, which one has the best networking and which one has this and which one has that. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, really. All right, so now let's go to point number 2. So let me just move this a little. And so point number 2 is you are not getting married to the technology, to the tech. So this is a very important stuff to understand, because many people overcomplicate this stuff, first of all, because various gurus told them it's a matter of life and death which one language you choose, and spoiler alert, it's not. But you are not getting married to the technology. So first of all, since you are already in the IT space, you are already are either somewhere gravitating towards test automation engineer, or you are just thinking about that, or you just thought about that. But either way, you are not getting married to technology. And as soon as you understand that, it's going to be a freeing feeling. So first of all, maybe just do a little indent. And so number 1, IT space. And this will sound really banal, but bear with me. IT space is constantly changing. And I'm not going to bore you with another tangent about artificial intelligence and stuff like that, because everyone's going on about that, oh, ChatGPT, nobody could have foreseen this. Yeah, cool. But even before ChatGPT, you could go to any period of the past of computer science, and you will always find a new breakthrough just around the corner. And this happens for all the technologies. And of course, when you are entangled with a corporation, it may move slower and at a more predictable pace than if you are within a startup and stuff like that. But the tech is constantly evolving. And you, as a tester, probably have already seen that. You are testing this stuff. You see the new technologies happening. You see that even though there are partners, there are still all the time there are new happenings within the space. There's constantly something new. There's constantly something around the corner. Now we have maybe AI will take over, blah, blah, blah. I'm not talking about that to scare you. I'm talking about that to have you understand the concept that the IT space is continually changing regardless of which path you choose. Even if you decide to still be a QA engineer and do manual tests, nothing wrong with that, of course. If you decide to still do that, it'll also be changing constantly. So you should really get rid of the notion that this is a big decision. And this is not a big decision, first of all, because IT space in general is constantly changing. But also, number 2, you learn the other ones anyway. And I hate to break it to you, but regardless of which one you choose, you are going to come in contact with the other ones too. And it'll probably come to you sooner than later. If you decide to learn any of them, first of all, remember that you are learning those for the concepts of programming, not for the language itself. But second of all, you will learn the other ones anyway, because suddenly there will be a different tech stack in the project, or you will be thrown into another project, or there will be a great new opportunity in your town, or a great new remote opportunity that you want to partake in, and you are going to jump to that one specifically because it doesn't matter. When you understand the core concepts, going to another language will be so easy for you. It may be hard to wrap your head around beforehand, but when you start to go on that journey, you will actually understand, I don't know about your previous experiences in general, but many people find, and I can vouch for that, that when you learn one instrument, it actually is way easier to jump to another one, even though at first glance a guitar and a piano have nothing in common. Similarly, if you partake in one type of sport, starting a new sport and having a few workouts here and there and then more and more and more, it seems to come to you way easier than if you just were stuck on the sidelines pondering for 5 years whether you should start running or weightlifting. The truth of the matter is, even though one is cardiovascular and another one is strength training, still, when you do one, it'll be way easier to jump into another one than if you were stuck on the fence. So if you want to take one thing from this talk, it is to not be stuck on the fence. Because this is what is hindering your problem, not the complexity of any of the languages. They are not complex to the extent no language is maybe within reason. There are languages which are specifically designed to be hard to comprehend as an exercise, but within the modern languages, there is no language that is harder than the other ones when all you want to understand are the core programming concepts, which are the things that you are going for. So number 2, you will learn the other ones anyway, and trust me, you will, either from your own curiosity or because you are going to come across them in one of your projects, or because someone will ask you to do that to help some other team or to help in another project or stuff like that. Really, you should believe me that you should really trust me on that. When an opportunity arises, when you are already a test automation engineer and a really interesting opportunity arises, you are not going to turn that down because, I learned Python a year ago, so I'm not going to look at the Java code. It gives me nightmares. Okay, Java may give you nightmares for different reasons. This is a talk for another time. But the truth of the matter, to be serious on that one, as long as you know the core concepts of programming, the jump from one language to the other, as I'm going to demonstrate you in a second, is going to be trivial. Really. So you are not getting married to the technology, and the IT space is constantly changing, and you will learn the other ones anyway. All right. And so the final point in this section, before we go into our nice little demonstration, is once again to reiterate, we talked about that a little bit in this one, that you are an expert at testing and not at programming. But to drive the point home, let me just change that. And so number 3, coding for a tester is a pre-tool. That would be a good way of talking about that. Is a pre-tool. Why? Why a pre-tool? Because the tool is the framework. So as a test automation engineer, you are going to be focusing on the framework in which the tests are actually being in your project. And this will depend on a lot of stuff. Most of it'll be like project specific, and you won't have too much to say about that. If you are lucky enough to be building the framework for a given project from the ground up, and we'll have a separate videos on the framework also, on frameworks, both on selecting them and on the differences, on many of the things. So we're not going to dive too deep into the framework specifics right now, but I want you to understand that this language is a pre-tool. So the language is just the device to get you from point A to point B. Point A is you not knowing programming and thus not being able to understand the specifics of a framework, and point B is being able to give your ideas a life through the coding concepts which you can translate within the framework. And so the testing framework, be it like Cypress, Playwright, Robot Framework, what have you, Selenium, this is the thing that you will actually see most of the time within the project. Like from time to time, you may need to write some, depending on the project and depending on scope of your responsibilities, you may need to use, like, for example, your coding skills to create some internal tool to actually help you, or to do something under the hood to actually create a new keyword, for example, through methods which are not exposed within the framework itself, but we are going way too deep already. So the thing you need to understand and to take away from that is that this is a pre-tool. This is just, if you think about the framework as, for example, if we go to like prehistoric times and you think of the framework as an axe that you have created from the stone, or a hammer that you have created from the stone, the coding knowledge that you gather is going to be the knowledge of how to get the stone. So you are not, it doesn't really matter if you take it from a mine or if you just hit a wall really hard, or if you know where to find it, or if you know where to buy it. Either of those scenarios gathers you stone, and you use the actual stone to actually build the hammer. And the similar thing is here, like the coding concepts still stand regardless of the technology you use for it. So as long as you understand that, you are going to be successful in actually learning the framework, and it'll be a breeze to learn a new framework, and it'll be trivial to jump to another language. And so to sum up this part of our talk, let me just grab this. So once again, I want you to take away three main things. First of all, it doesn't matter which language you choose. Second of all, the general knowledge of programming is the most important. And many people confuse programming with a programming language. This is not the same thing. You need to understand that as long as you choose any of those four languages and learn the basics of them, and we'll have a crash course on at least one of them on the channel soon. So as long as you choose any of them, they will all be a great device to help you understand the core concepts of programming. And this is the general knowledge of programming which you need, period. You don't really need anything other than that. So as long as you have any of these, you have the basics down, you then understand the core concepts of programming, and you are ready to learn the framework then. And you may ask, why shouldn't I start from learning the framework? And the problem with that approach is that, of course, we'll get deeper into that in the framework episode, but the problem with that approach is that if you go this way, you will have two things on your plate simultaneously, and you will need to constantly context switch between the problems of the framework. So how do I actually interact with this element? What are the locators and stuff like that? And the problems of programming. When you approach learning testing framework, you need to be so competent in these core concepts, which are actually really easy, that they don't really obstruct the view. They are no roadblocks for you. So then you only focus on things you don't understand within the testing framework and within the testing environment as a whole, not really on the problem of the core concepts of programming getting in your way. So this is the reason why you need to learn these first and not second. Because you may have it'll be a good question. If it doesn't matter, why do I need to learn this at all? And want to reiterate once again, it doesn't matter which one you choose, but choosing none of them is not an allowed choice in this scenario. So when I'm talking about the thing that it doesn't really matter which one you choose. It doesn't really matter which one you choose as long as you choose any of them. So I already see you thinking, oh wait, okay, if he says that I don't need to learn any of them, then it's cool. I'm not saying that you can learn none of them. You can not learn any of them to the extent of an expert of programming in that language, because that'll be a waste of time. You'd way better become an expert at a framework than at any of those languages. But choosing none of the big four is not a choice that lets you progress forward. So let's have that out of the way. So, okay, so the second takeaway, you need to know the core concepts of programming. And finally, that this is a pre-tool, but it is necessary to master this pre-tool to actually jump into the actual tool. And before we wrap things up for today and do a little summary, let's first dive into a demonstration that I have for you that will help drive the point home that it all really doesn't matter. All right, so we're back in action, and don't get discouraged. We're not going to go through all this stuff and understand all of this. So the reason I'm bringing these scripts right now is to let you see that it really doesn't matter which language you learn. Maybe first of all, let's just do this. So in order to make you see easier that they are separate. So, okay, so let's just go through them really quickly. And I'm going to go pretty quickly because I don't want to overwhelm you with the knowledge of programming itself. This is not a programming crash course. It'll be available soon on the channel, but this is not it yet. So here we are just focusing on how easy the other languages come to you when you already know at least one of them. And so we are going to focus on the things that I mentioned earlier, and we're not really focusing on why the syntax here is like that and the syntax there is different. That's not the point of this presentation. Okay, so first of all, let's do a really quick and brief summary of the first one, the Python one, to understand what are we even dealing with here. So I wanted to show example scripts, and I didn't want my personal opinions and my personal sways to influence that. So I actually asked ChatGPT to provide me with some examples with the basics of programming, like loops, functions, taking user input, data types, stuff that I talked about earlier. So, okay, so let's just go through this one really quickly. So, and please don't focus on why is he jumping from this place to another place. Why? It'll all come to place when you know programming yourself. Maybe you do, so then feel free to look at the script in the language that you already know now, so that you can actually progress on your own. But for now, let's just focus on going through one of the scripts, understand what it does, and then choosing and then proving on the other ones that it's actually really sensible. So the script that we're going to focus on is the Python one. So the thing that it does is that it takes the number of users. So it asks the user, how many users do you want to greet? And then for each of the users, it asks for a name, it asks for age, it asks for the favorite language, and then it starts the greet user function with all three of these arguments. And this function greets them. So it says hello and uses the name that you provided. It says you are some years old, and this is the variable also that you provided earlier. And it says that your favorite language is your favorite language. And then at the end, it checks whether your favorite language is the one that the script was created in. So in this case, Python. And if it was, it tells you that it was a correct choice. And if it's not, it just tells you that it's an interesting choice in a really passive-aggressive voice. So either way, it goes through all of the users and just prints, thanks for interacting with me, have a great day. So this is a really simple script. It may very well still be way too overwhelming for you at this stage if you don't know nothing about programming. But remember, here we are focusing on the high-level concept of similarity between programming languages. We are not trying to learn Python here. We're not trying to learn Java or C# or JavaScript here. We are just going to understand that they are very similar once you understand these concepts. And as you can see, there are the concepts that I talked about. So you have the taking of the user input, you have the for loop, you have the functions. You need to know your data types to some degree. So let's not get into it too much right now. You know how to print the output. Okay, so this is all fine and dandy. Now let's go to Java, because we now understand the script in Python. And now let's look at the script in Java. So the first thing that will influence your perception, I think, is that you will see this one, like import Java util scanner. In C# you will see using system, and you will be like, oh wait, there wasn't stuff like that in Python. Yeah, there wasn't, but let's not focus on that. Some public class, some class, I don't know about that, man. Sure, okay, let's not focus on that right now. So let's focus on the things that we know. So for now, you understand the script in Python. More or less, it's all fine. Don't try to be too hard on yourself if you don't get it completely, because we are just getting the overarching picture of the problem here. So you know how it works in general. So let's just look for the similarities. So you know that you have, maybe let's change this to the pen. You have, okay, maybe the highlighter was better. So you take the number of users. Okay, let's see how to do this in Java. I don't know Java, I don't know how it works, but wait. There is this, and there is this. So yeah, it looks like this is taking the number of users. I don't know, maybe. Okay, and let's look at C#. We have int num users parse console readline. Okay, so readline, here we have next int, so int is integer maybe, and here we have input, and in JavaScript we have prompt, so it probably prompts the user to somehow provide the value. And I hope that you are starting to see how it all feels in place. So the general idea that I'm trying to convey here is that when you understand one of these languages, it's not like reading any of the other ones is going to be black magic to you. But let's go deeper. So you have the for in range, so we know that this one just repeats all these things a couple of times, because this is called a for loop. A loop goes in a loop, in a circle. So it does something and circles back to the beginning, and does something and circles back to the beginning until some initial requirement is met or not met. And here, wow, we also have a for loop. Yeah, it is structured a little bit different, but it also takes the num users. It also does a for. Okay, we also have a for loop here and a for loop here. So let's try a straight line. Yeah, so these three are very similar, to be honest. They are a little different from that one, like syntax-wise, but they are all still pretty similar, right? So, okay, then you take the input. We have already covered the input, and then we try to call the greet user function, right? Okay, so let's see here. Oh, this actually looks pretty similar, maybe even the same. We have the semicolon at the end, but it's the same stuff, basically. Okay, we have the greet user here. We have the greet user here. It's basically the same, right? So if we know how to call a function in Python, we suddenly know how to call it in Java. We know how to call it in C#. We know how to call it in JavaScript. Wow, what is happening here? All right, so let's look at the definition of the function. We have the def greet user, and we take the arguments that are provided to the greet user function. And here we have static void greet user. Yeah, but it looks pretty similar, right? We are not doing def, we are doing static void, but it looks pretty similar. Seems very similar here. You may start to see the resemblance between the C# and Java, that it's getting pretty uncanny. And then JavaScript. Yeah, so this is called function instead of def, but like, sure, you have to see that the resemblance is pretty astounding, right? Isn't it? So now let's print something to the user. We have this section. Pardon my shaky the drawing skills. We have this one, we have this one, this one, and this one. So yeah, here we have print, here we have console log. You can start to see that these languages are kind of connected in pairs as long as the length of the code is considered. It's not a general, like, something that will stand for all examples, but for a very good subset of them, you can experience that JavaScript and Python are the less verbose ones, which usually have shorter scripts and which are more concise, and Java and C# are very similar very often. So this is like my hacky suggestion for you to actually see the resemblance of them. So as you can see, print, console log, so this probably logs something to the console. All right. Here we have system out print line, so it prints some line out to the system. And here we have console write line, so it writes the line out to the console, maybe? Who knows? We have the conditional, if else, if else, if else, if else. Wow, they look basically the same. We don't have the curly brackets here, which we have here, and we have here, and we have here. But other than that, it's hard not to see that they are very, very similar. And so now, after we have explored a couple of these things, I think that it is safe to say that it cannot be understated that once you understand what is going on in this script, you actually know what's going on in the other ones. And to underline some of the points that I want to make, I think the most important one is, once again, the languages are similar. And I am once again talking about the core concepts. And I know you may start to rebel and say that, yeah, but it's not the same. Like, have you seen how verbose it is in the middle ones as opposed to the ones on the edges? Yeah, but we are not focusing on the fact that the syntax is slightly different. We are focusing on, can you understand the other ones if you understand the first one? And the truth of the matter is, you can, even if you don't know programming, even if you haven't ever seen code in your life, even if you didn't know a single thing about programming before watching this video, you can already see, hey, these, I could understand them. Like, if I understand the first one, the other ones seem pretty legible to me. So this is the thing that I want you to take out of this video, that the languages are similar. And once again, I want to underline this one. They are similar, they are not the same. It's not the same thing. So of course there are going to be differences. Of course there are going to be caveats. Of course there are going to be some gotchas where you look at one of the languages and be like, I'm not sure what it does. Of course there are going to be moments like that. But in general, and you want to focus on the 80% of these situations, not on the remaining 20, or maybe even, I think the ratio is even more in your favor, but let's just say 80-20. So the languages are going to be similar, and the core concepts, if you understand them in any of them, you are going to understand them in all of them. There is no way around that. And the second point that I'd like to make is that I could write that by heart doesn't equal I understand what it does. So many times I've seen people telling stuff like, yeah, I understand what it does, but what it does. I understand what it does, but I still couldn't just sit down and write it. Of course you couldn't, because if you know one language, it's not like a 3-4 day pass to the code studio land theme park of programming. the fact that you know Python and you understand the other ones, it does not warrant the fact that you are suddenly going to be proficient at all of them, and you are suddenly going to be able to sit down and write and understand. Of course, if you know Python and suddenly you go to a project where you need to know a different language and you need to go to a job interview, we're going to have a separate video on job interviews. But if you go to a job interview, of course you are going to first have to do a primer on another language. Of course you're going to have to do a crash course on another language. Of course you need to do that because it doesn't like naturally come to you. It's not like Bart Simpson learning French when you just walk through the streets and suddenly you can code in Python. And of course not. Of course not. If you choose any of them, you still need to spend some time at learning the other ones if you need to be able to sit down and write an equivalent script in a different language. But the thing is, it'll take you a substantially smaller chunk of time if you already know any of the other languages than if you were just going to start afresh. So the thing that you need to, I think, take out of this conversation that we are having is that when you see that by looking at one of the scripts, you understand the other ones, this should give you an idea that if you then want to learn another language after the first one, it'll come way more naturally to you because you know the concepts. You are just going to need to look at what the syntax looks like for these concepts. For example, you will need to learn that, okay, in Java I need to do this import and I need to wrap all my code in this class, and I need to do similar thing in C#, but I don't need to do that in JavaScript. So of course you are going to need to learn that, but then you know what you are looking for because you already know the concepts. You know the all right, I need to have an integer and I need to take the input from my user and I need to do a for loop and I need to do a conditional and a function, and then bam, you can just go to Google and be like, Java, how to write a conditional, Java functions, Java calling a function, C#, taking input from the user, JavaScript, making sure the input is in an integer, stuff like that. It'll just come very naturally to you because you will know what you don't know. And this is the key. If you learn any of the languages that we talked about here, and you learn the concepts of programming, when you think of something, you know how to translate that into the programming language. You know how to transport that into the core concepts of programming, and then doing the final push. So writing that down, actually creating an actual script that does that. This will be a breeze because you will know what you need to do. You will know how it's called. So the final thing will be just to look for how to do that, like to actually put it on paper, on screen. You won't be stumbling in the dark thinking about, oh my God, I know I want to do this or that, but I have no idea how to do that. And you won't like be asking weird questions to Google and like hitting your head on the wall. You'll actually know what you don't know. And this is a blessing, really. This is what you are aiming for. You are not knowing, you are not aiming to become a Mr. Know-it-all. You are aiming to become a Mr. Know what I'm looking for. And this is the main point of this whole conversation. That you are not aiming to be a Mr. Know-it-all. You are aiming to be a Mr. Know what to look for. And this is the real strength. You need to be the Mr. Know what to look for. And the way to become one is to learn the core concepts of programming, not to become a savant at any of them. So this is the way, and this is what you are actually shooting for. So I hope that this presentation made you understand that the differences between the languages may be visible, may be syntax-wise, may be even substantial, but they won't prevent you from understanding the code. So the main thing that I wanted to show you is that many people think of the difference between the languages like, yeah, I know Python, but then when I see Java, like, oh my God, what do I like? Do I read it from the left to the right, or do I need to read it upside down? No, no. When you know Python, you know the concepts, you know what to look for. So if you are reading someone else's code, you know what it does. If you suddenly need to write your own code, and you will be in that situation very often, when you will suddenly need to use a different language than the one you are most accustomed to, then you also need you also like see what to look for. You also understand what to look for. It's not really any dog magic. And like on a side note, you can also see that these ones are really, really similar, and these ones are pretty similar. So this also goes without saying that when you learn Java, like C# is going to be really exceptionally trivial. If you learn Python, learning JavaScript will probably come more easily to you than Java and C#, but none of them will be too much of a mystery. So yeah, I would like you to focus on learning one of the languages and not really to fret and scratch your head forever thinking about which one of them is the right choice, because there is no right choice. Any of the choices is right. The only wrong choice is not making a choice. And so now for the final summary, I want to cover one more thing. So you may say, okay, Casper, okay, I understand all of that, but what do I do? No. Yeah. So I can understand that. Having said all that, you may be like, all right, Casper, I understand that, really. You can stop talking. I understand your point. I can absolutely say that I understand what you're saying, but still, I need to learn something. So what do I do now? Like, I feel stuck. I had questions before this video, and now I have even more, because if it all doesn't matter, then it doesn't really help me make a choice. What do I do? Oh, what do I do? Woe is me. Oh my God. So I completely understand that you may think, okay, what do I do now? So I will give you some actionable steps that I think would be a worthy choice afterwards. So first of all, I would say set a deadline. And I don't want to become like a cliche coach here and tell you that, yeah, you need to wake up at 5 a.m. and for the next 5 days think about nothing but the programming language. No, but like reasonably set a deadline and make it quick. I would say like 3 days, to be honest, like 3 days. 7 if you want to push it and procrastinate. If you want to procrastinate. Because truth of the matter is, really, you are already thinking about that too much. So set a deadline until which you need to make a choice, and if you don't, just throw a dice. Like, flip a coin, ask ChatGPT, whatever. Like, really, make a random choice, because a random choice is better than no choice, and you will come across the other technology sooner or later, rather sooner than later, and you will actually use all of them in one way, shape, form, or another. So really, there is no way there is no reason to overthink that. So first of all, set a deadline. 2, if you need a tiebreaker, if you really need something that will make you go one way or another, if you really need something to push you one way or another, you can think of complementary activities tied to that language. I wouldn't worry about that too much, but you can to browse side project possibility. Because doing this here project, I think, is the best way to learn programming, and we'll have another video focused on how to learn programming. Here we're just talking about the high-level concepts of which language to choose, but we're going to actually have a separate video where we focus on how to actually do that, how to actually learn the language in the best and most efficient way. And I think that having a sub-project is actually essential if you want to learn it in a structured manner and actually do some coding on on an actual organism instead of being stuck in a tutorial hell. So I think that browsing side project possibility is a good way of doing that. So what I mean by that is browse what a given language can be used for that the others cannot. So for example, maybe you want to make a game. So for example, you are interested in making games. So then you can do C# because it is in Unity. And so maybe this will motivate you to actually learn. To maybe if you see the final outcome of your learning, other than being able to understand a testing framework and actually jump into test automation engineer area, if you think that making games as a byproduct of that would be a worthy goal, you can go to games, and then C# would be, I would say, pretty sensible, because you can then go to Unity. But you can also focus on something like Python to try Pygame and stuff like that. For example, if you wanted to do like generative art, then you can do JS, because you can, I think it was called Threes. Threes.js was the library that allowed you to do really cool stuff in JavaScript. It allowed you to actually do visualizations, to do things that react to actual movement, and that react to things happening with your mouse, for example, or to sound. So you have JavaScript for that, which has a really well-known library for that. And so maybe this will motivate you that during your journey you will be able to do cool stuff like that, and so on and so on. You can do similar things. For example, maybe you want to do data science. Like you always wanted to do those cool visualizations and plots, and you really want to dive deeper into your data and see for example, how the data comes to life and how it all interacts together, and you want to run some machine learning algorithms on top of that. So then Python would be a good choice, because then you would have hundreds of libraries, because Python is really big in data science space. But like, for example, you would have scikit-learn for the machine learning. You would have pandas. You would have keras, matplotlib, and stuff like that. So basically, in any of the languages you choose, you will have some stuff that you can do as a side project that will look cool. So whatever like rustles your bells, you do you. So I can't really recommend on that one, because this is highly individual, and you should do something that feels like it could bring joy to you, because the truth of the matter is that however much you would want to become a test automation engineer, if you get discouraged along the way, you won't. So you should try to keep your spirits up, and if it becomes too daunting, if it becomes too boring, don't focus just on the end goal, because that's never motivating enough. You should focus on the intermittent steps also, and find which of the side projects feel like they are interesting enough that they could spark your creativity to progress forward. So I would say that these are the two main things. If you really wanted, maybe you would want to browse the job boards nearby, but I wouldn't really focus on that already, because there is still a couple of steps to make, and choosing the framework, and some of them are platform agnostic and they are language agnostic. Like Playwright, you could do Playwright in any of the languages that we talked about. So I wouldn't focus on really being too clingy with the job market yet, or ever for that matter. But that's for another episode. So I would focus on these two. Set a deadline, a quick one, and choose which of the languages resonate with your proclivity for a given side project, so that they could help you sustain with the concepts that you are learning. Okay, and I think that this is the end of what I wanted to show you today. And so if I need to leave you with one final thought, I think that the final thought is basically the reiteration of the previous steps. So this is basically the thing that we have talked about. Don't overthink stuff. Be a Mr. Know, or Mrs. of course, know what to look for, and choose any of the languages, but choose. So this is the main thing that I would like to leave you with. There is poison in static water, as I think Henry David Thoreau once said. So this is a good thing to keep in mind. The problem is not choosing any of them and being in the purgatory of your thoughts forever. Just choose one of them, and it'll really, really show you how much of a non-crucial decision that was along the line. You will see that you only needed the concepts, and the languages were just the vehicle to get you there. And any of the languages will be fine. Make the change will be fine. You can always make the change. The space is constantly evolving. You will come across all the other technologies sooner or later. And the being a Mr. Know what to look for is way more important than being a Mr. Know-it-all. Because a Mr. Know-it-all goes very deep in one domain, and this is sometimes something that you are looking for. For example, if you want to become a software developer in a given tech stack, it's good to go really deep within the programming language that you are coding in. But as a tester, there is a slew of other things revolving around which you need to understand, many of which you already understand because you are a QA engineer, so you need a lot of that in your everyday work anyway. And the other ones, we'll talk about them in a different episode, because there is some domain-specific knowledge of testing which you may not have come across as a manual tester. And it is good to know that, even if it's only for the job interviews as a test automation engineer. So we're going to cover that also within the upcoming episodes. But for now, don't overthink this. Be a Mr. Know what to look for, because once you choose, there will be no problem in making the change or understanding the other options to such a degree that making a temporary or permanent change is not a problem anymore. So having said all that, really set a close deadline, look at what seems the most promising. If you really, really, really need me to tell you something, if you really need me to make a recommendation, I would go with Python, simply because of what I understated within the demo, that Python just seems the most legible to me. It is a really general purpose programming language. It can be used for a lot of other things. It can make a domain change pretty easy. Of course, the other ones will also be easy, but like I said, if you really need a tiebreaker from me, I would go with Python. I would go with Python because I like the frameworks that are connected to it. I like the ecosystem. I like the legibility. I like how concise it is. And I just think these are the things that make it worth for me. I'm also, like, on a side note, pretty often entangled with robot frameworks, so Python is a necessity for me. But even if I weren't, I would still, I think, go with Python nowadays, and a couple of years back, and I think a couple of years in the future too. So I wish you all the best. Please ask your questions in the comments if you have any. We'll be back with another episode to really help you understand other angles of being a test automation engineer and becoming one. And I wish you the best of luck. It really is a very interesting and a wild ride, but one which is really worth it. So I wish you the best of luck and keep on rocking.